There's a tree in Charleston, South Carolina, that scientists have studied for decades and still cannot fully explain. Not the age, not the height, those are documented. What they cannot explain is the shape. It grows outward instead of upward. Its branches spread across 17,000 square feet of ground, larger than most American homes. Some of those branches dip back into the soil and reroot, as if the tree is trying to become something the biology of a single trunk cannot support. The longest branch stretches 89 feet on its own. The root system visible above ground covers more area than a city block. They call it the angel oak. The Park Service calls it an anomaly of growth. Botanists call it a specimen. Tour guides call it beautiful. What no one calls it, what no official explanation addresses, is what it actually looks like. It looks like the base of something much, much larger. Something that once reached far higher than any current measurement accounts for. Something that spread not 89 feet, but miles. And something that, when it finally fell, left behind only what you are looking at right now. The official story is that this tree is unique, a one-time biological curiosity, the result of unusual soil conditions and coastal climate. What that story does not account for is this. Angel oak is not unique. There are structures on this planet, not in museums, not in fossil beds, not in remote jungles, standing in American national parks right now, photographed every single day by tourists who post them online without asking what they are actually looking at. And those structures share the same profile, the same debris pattern, the same internal anomalies that no geological process on record has ever cleanly produced. I'm going to show you three of them. I'm going to show you exactly what the official explanation says. And I'm going to show you precisely where that explanation stops. By the end of this video, you will not look at the American landscape the same way again. Not the theory. The evidence first. Always the evidence first. Here is something that does not appear in biology textbooks. The tallest living tree on Earth right now is a coastal redwood in Northern California called Hyperion. It is 380 feet tall. It took approximately 700 years to reach that height. It weighs an estimated 1.5 million pounds. Every biologist who has studied it agrees on one thing. It is near the physical limit of how tall a tree can grow under current atmospheric conditions. Current atmospheric conditions. That phrase is doing a lot of work, and almost nobody stops to examine it. The atmosphere today contains approximately 21% oxygen. In the Carboniferous period, roughly 300 million years ago, that number was 35%. Not a small difference. A 67% increase in available oxygen. The physical properties of air at 35% oxygen are meaningfully different. Pressure gradients are different. The energy available to biological systems is different. The ceiling on biological scale is different. We know this. It is not contested science. What is contested, or rather what is simply never discussed, is what that atmospheric difference actually meant for the upper limit of tree height. The textbook answer is 150-foot lycopsid trees in coal swamps, giant club mosses. That is the official explanation for how Earth's atmosphere reached 35% oxygen. A global forest of 150-foot plants somehow produced oxygen at 10 times the rate of modern forests, from plants that are shorter than a modern skyscraper. Atmospheric scientists who model deep-time climate have noted carefully and quietly in footnotes that the numbers require either an implausibly dense global coverage of these 150-foot plants or something else. Something the models do not currently include. Nobody has published the something else, not because the data does not suggest it, because the category for it does not exist in the current literature. In 1908, something exploded over a remote region of Siberia called Tunguska. The blast flattened approximately 830 square miles of forest. Trees were knocked outward from a central point in a radial pattern, the way water spreads from a drop stone. The explosion had no crater. No meteorite fragments were ever found at the epicenter. The official explanation, settled after decades of debate, is an airburst from a small comet or asteroid that vaporized before impact. That explanation is probably correct. What is interesting is the pattern it left. The flattened trees pointing outward in every direction from a central point, preserved in photographs and field surveys from the time, look structurally identical to something else entirely: the root spread patterns of large trees. When a very large tree falls, it does not fall cleanly. The root system tears upward on one side and the crown impacts on the other, creating a radial disturbance pattern in the surrounding forest. The larger the tree, the wider the disturbance. For a tree of sufficient scale, a tree measuring not in hundreds of feet, but in miles, the root disturbance alone would cover hundreds of square miles. We do not have a category for a fallen tree that covers hundreds of square miles, so we do not look for one. The Tunguska site recovered. Within decades, new forest grew in the disturbed zone. By now, a century later, much of it is indistinguishable from the surrounding taiga. In 300 million years, a fallen organism of sufficient scale would leave nothing visible, nothing except the compressed base, the mineralized root system, the stump. Drive to Monument Valley on the Arizona-Utah border. You have seen it 1,000 times without realizing it. Every Western film, every road trip photograph, the Mittens, Merrick Butte, the Three Sisters, sandstone formations rising 1,000 feet from a flat desert plain, their tops flat, their bases circular, their walls nearly vertical. The official explanation is differential erosion. Softer surrounding rock wore away over 270 million years, leaving the harder sandstone standing. That explanation is consistent. What it does not explain is the debris. When erosion removes rock from around a harder core, the removed material spreads outward gradually, carried by wind and water over vast distances. The debris around Monument Valley formations did not spread. It sits at the base, concentrated, as if it did not erode away from the structure but fell away from it, as if something shed its outer layer rather than having it removed. Geologists have a word for that debris. They call it talus, fallen material. They do not ask what it fell from. They assume they already know. Now drive north to the Colorado Plateau, to the area around Canyonlands National Park in Utah, where the rock formations include structures called grabens, parallel valleys that dropped when the rock between them collapsed inward. The official explanation is subsurface salt dissolution causing the surface to sink. What is anomalous is the pattern. The grabens run in perfectly parallel lines. Salt dissolution produces irregular organic collapse patterns. These are straight, uniform, spaced at intervals that suggest not a random underground process, but a structural regularity in whatever lies